A show based on the facts, honesty, the man, the myth, the legend, Constitutionalist Joseph M. Leonard.
Welcome to Constitutionalist Politics Podcast, aka CTP. I am your host, Joseph M. Leonard, and that's L-E-N-A-R-D. CTP is your no muss, no fuss, just me, you, and occasional guest type podcast. Really appreciate you tuning in. As Graham Norton would say, let's get on with the show! Hello, everyone. Welcome to CTP Season 2 special episode with our soon-to-be new friend, Roy Weaver, author of a very unique book. I'm going to hold it up. I don't know if you'll be able to see the cover very well on the behind-the-scenes video or not. It's not printed out too well. It's too small. But it is The Largemouth Bass and the Way of Things. And you're going to think, well, why am I talking about a book with a cartoon cover and that kind of a name? Is that a children's book? Well, not really. And we'll get into the why. But before we do that, let's welcome to the show. Every time I hit record, my mouth and brain disconnect and don't want to cooperate. Let's welcome to the show Roy Weaver and get into the, usual nitty-gritty. Who are you? Where were you born and raised, and where are you now? And, what are your hobbies? We don't go into what are your pronouns here or anything like that, but, all that kind of stuff.
Well, hi, good afternoon. And thank you so much. It's such a privilege to actually sit and chat with you. I read your some of the material on your books and watched you on, of course, Truth Social. And I really appreciate your perspective. Yes, I wrote the book, The Largemouth Bass and the Way of Things. I grew up in the woods in Wisconsin. Of course, that's on the book. So, of course, I'm a Green Bay Packer fan, and I saw
all right. Whoa, stop right there. Discussion over. Goodbye. Hey, got to keep a sense of humor, right? Please continue. You know what? No, it's kind of funny, though. And aside, but by the time this airs, this reference won't make as much sense. But literally just yesterday, let's say we are recording Wednesday, September the 25th. Last night, on beforeitsnews.com, which is one of the places I write, I put an article up about Brett Favre testifying before Congress. So, that's an aside. I'll try to remember to throw that in the show notes, but please, I interrupted. Continue. You born and raised.
But the reason that article was significant is it was on my... Of course, I grew up in Green Bay, and my daughter had brain cancer, and it was on her bucket list to meet Brett Favre. And of course, we got to spend time with Brett Favre in the bowels of the stadium after practice one day, and it was a great experience and nothing but respect. So anyway, just that quick note. And also, had I not been a fan, I would probably be cut off the family tree.
Well, I, of course, being in Detroit, could not be a cheesehead fan, but I respected the hell out of Brett Favre and even Aaron Rodgers' talents, abilities. That's enjoying the talent and what they were capable of, and not enjoying that they beat us are two different things, right?
Right. Well, I'm a Yooper by birth, so half my family are Detroit fans, and the other half moved south to the frozen tundra because it would be warmer than living in the Great White North. So gotta
explain that to those not in the Midwest. Yooper the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. The whole hand thing that makes a map. That's the upper. At any rate, again, I interrupted. Please.
Right, and of course the UP looks sort of like a shark, which is part of the interpretation of my book, because the characters in the book are the politisharks, and on the cover is a politishark from Politishark City, and you can see it buried in the background. It's in the future or in the past, and so it has some climate change. It has diversity. You can't get more diverse than the ocean. I mean, I have a copy I can hold up as well.
It'd probably be better if you hold up an actual copy for the behind-the-scenes video than me trying to lift it up a bit. Yeah, there we go. We can see it much better, although there's a bit of light glare on it. But yeah, for those looking behind the scenes video, that's a little better view of it.
Sure, yeah. And you can always get a good perspective on Amazon when you look it up. And so I wrote the story because I go fishing. So I wrote the story in 2015 or 2016 because I was hoping to get the grandkids to start reading. And I wanted to give them some perspective and the benefit of my 35, 36 years of working in the government, in the military, as a defense contractor, and as a civil servant. And I thought, well, I could throw in some history. I could use diversity, a little climate change. Of course, everybody thinks the earth will be covered with water one day. And so I said, let's start there and incorporate a little history into how.
Now you put in my mind, just the way my mind works, something always triggers, not like an emotional snowflake leftist kind of trigger, but, spurs a thought. The old, I can't think of his name. He's in Yellowstone. Kevin Costner Waterworld movie, right? Yeah.
Right. Right. Okay. So yeah, and the fish start out in their natural environment, producing young and train, and we have fish schools where they teach their children how to survive and live in an ocean world. The reefs are all thriving and prospering. And then the politisharks decide they're going to try to take over the ocean. And of course, they apply all of the same tactics and techniques that have been used throughout history by those who want to reign in dominion over the commoners. And so eventually, of course, as in most cases, in most cultures and most civilizations, somebody rises up from the oppressed working class and says, hey, it's time to challenge these people who want to reign in dominion over the ocean. And they're destroying the reefs, and they're they're indoctrinating our children. And so it's time to rise up and challenge them. And I mean, that's been going on throughout history since, Egypt, Rome, and it relates to current events today. So
yeah, well, as the saying goes, history may not repeat, but it sure does rhyme an awful lot.
Right. It's very familiar. So I thought if I could get the 12-year-old grandson to read a book, I made it short. I put in pictures, and I thought, well, that would be a good way to plant a seed. And then I heard about the 1776 project. Remember when that was prominent? I said, well, why don't I get it published, and then I can offer it as part of the 1776 project. But since I published it, it is very popular in Europe. And I've noticed, I looked on abebooks.com, and you can see where it's being sold and where it's being purchased. And you probably do the same with your books.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that it's being purchased through school libraries in quantities of 17 to 20, which is an absolute excellent sign that, hey, people are introducing this story and this concept. And it's allegorical, but it's multiple levels. So I've had people in their, 40s, 80s say, this isn't just a kid's book.
Exactly.
Everyone
Exactly what I was alluding to. And unfortunately, you'll never see it getting into U.S. schools. They're too busy in the indoctrination factories, peddling raunch and perversion and CRT and all that crap. Let's not let them have history and civics and human nature psychology lesson in a children's book, because, hey, then they might be able to think.
Right. Well, I thought I would originally make the characters caricaturistic of people who are currently in those power positions in the world today.
Yeah, on the nose. Yeah.
I say, well, would it matter? Because in 20 years, the book will still be here and those people will not. So why not just stick with the natural character?
Well, we can only hope a lot of those people won't, right? That's why we need terminal nuts. These people get in and they're careers for life, enriching themselves, serving themselves rather than serving the people, which is kind of part and parcel of one of the themes of the book. Yes?
Right. Correct. And to some of your perspective, people who don't have faith and who don't believe in God, their motives are to live a long time and acquire as much as possible. So you can't get those people out of those positions if that's their motive. Do right by others and govern responsibly and be a responsible, God-fearing person, and then your motives change. You become a giving and supportive person of responsible governing and not acquiring wealth or acquiring power. So it's hard to get those people out, if for nothing else, that reason alone. So that's why I appreciate your perspective. Is if you don't have faith and you don't believe in God, then your focus is on living forever, gaining power and gaining.
Yeah, well, I often bring up Penn of Penn and Teller, right? He's a well-known, right, comedian slash magician. Thank you. Again, now the brain's not, the mouth's working, but the brain ain't. But he's a devout atheist. But unlike most atheists, he doesn't hate and want to destroy Christianity, and he understands our Judeo-Christian foundation. He is just saying he's got no problem with that, because from an atheist standpoint, a social humanistic standpoint, those things are just being a good fellow human, right? You don't steal my stuff, I don't steal your stuff. That's just being a good human.
Sure.
Or I can't murder you, you can't murder me, right? Though those are Judeo-Christian ethos foundations, sure, he agrees with them as just an intellectual pursuit. But of course, I care about his soul, so I pray for him, because as you were kind of alluding to about my show, he's missing some things in that. And without that greater source, as I talked with Neil Mammon about, and Kevin McGarry of Every Black Life Matters, without that higher power, that authority over you, me, and all of us, then the atheistic attitude, they are their own God, and they can lord over you. They answer to no one, even though we're supposed to be we the people republic, and they're supposed to work for us.
Right. Well, in a purely natural environment, you end up with prey and predator. And the planet just spins around the sun for millennium, and all you have is people trying to consume or acquire. And so it's a prey and predator environment.
Yeah. To use the left word, they like to call themselves progressive, but there's really no progress. There's no, right? And they love Darwinism, but there's no intellectual evolving in any of that. Religion brought some of that to humanity so that we became better than, because as you were in the green room before I hit record, I was saying it was a hectic day. I had a show to drop. I didn't have it edited and all that with Leslie Hall. And he talks about those things, human nature. He has a book, The Animal Inside. All of these things we're talking about here now relate in how we progressed, but the left really isn't progressive. They're regressive. They want to return to the old days before the U.S., where we're free and in charge. They want an oligarchic society again, where they, the ruling elites, lord over everyone. They're regressive, not progressive.
And that is the key to the book. People.
Oh, thank you. I accidentally stumbled on that. Yeah,
yeah, you nailed it.
Yay me! Gotta keep a sense of humor, right? Things are too serious. Gotta keep a sense of humor.
Absolutely, absolutely. Reigning in dominion. It doesn't matter if it's family, if it's community, if it's country, or the world in total. Someone is trying to reign in dominion because they don't have anywhere else to go. Yeah. So
yeah.
Instead of fearing and worshiping God as the conscience of the universe, so to speak, or the universal mainframe that's all knowing and has all information, they want to create their own idol called AI. So they want to replace God with AI. And we know from the Old Testament, God hates idols, and he wipes out everybody. Things that they can.
Yeah. Oh, that is a perfect insertion here. And I thought of something. Now it left my brain, so hopefully it'll come back to me. Because I try to take notes, but I don't script a show, and sure. I didn't write it down. So of course the train left the brain station. Hopefully I can catch back up with it. But before we go any further, for those seeing the video, I see over your left shoulder to our right on your screen, that's an Iraqi flag with another logo. Were you part of Iraqi Operation Freedom or the original Gulf War? Or
I worked at an army depot during the Gulf War, and most of our job was to transition European equipment and to be used for the desert. And I worked in C3I, Man Control Communications and Intelligence, C4ISR, Man Control Communications, Computers, Intelligence, Surveillance, Reconnaissance, and IEW, Intelligence, Electronic Warfare, Counter IED, and most of the intelligence acquisition process, contracting, delivering weapon systems and capabilities to the military, making sure it works, making sure they're trained to use it, making sure the supply system is energized to support it, and if not, to make sure that there were contractors available that could support the soldiers on the battlefield. And I did it for Iraq. And I don't know if you can see the other pictures, but one is the truck I drove, and the other one I worked with.
Vaguely. Yeah, if somebody's viewing it on their handheld smartphone, they're probably not going to be able. Right. But me looking on my laptop, I can see it. Hopefully others will too. But yeah, the issue being our lack of intelligence at times. I say some study The Art of War by Sun Tzu. Others, unfortunately, too many in our West, study The Art of Stupid by Sun Byrne, right? We're always thinking the last war, the jungles of Vietnam and the deserts of Iraq, two different battlefields, and the inability to think back to World War II, where we were in the sands of Africa, to understand we need equipment for all environments, all weathers, all terrains. Like I love the Osprey. I know sometimes it's unwieldy to handle. I understand from pilots and requires a lot of training, but it was born out of necessity of the Jimmy Carter's failure to rescue the hostages in Iran because of the helicopters intaking sand, and I think 2 of the 4 going down. They couldn't complete the mission. They had to retreat. And the Osprey was finally somebody's brain capacity saying, okay, we need a dual use, a VTOL vehicle that can work in the sands or in the regular plains in all weather. Now, obviously, you're going to need a pretty good clearing to land that in a forested area, but it's a more thought out, all-purpose transport flight vehicle.
Right. Well, my picture on the back of the book is me standing on Saddam's parade ground platform, and I'm standing there like Saddam was in his statue, with his arm out. And I had some Marine friends, and I drove a South African vehicle on patrol, and I would take it to the parade ground with a cross sword to do some training and chase other vehicles around and do some things. So I would always take Marines with me. I never went anywhere in Baghdad without some Marines to come with me, whether they were the gunners or whether it was with the Rough Riders that would escort us, or we would take the lead. But I just thought it was pretty cool. I asked my Marine friend to take my picture standing on Saddam's platform. It was kind of a hoot.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you mentioned Saddam, because we'll get back to the book. We need to get back to the book. But like I say, this show isn't scripted. Rabbit holes open, we go down them. And you mentioned Saddam, so I feel it necessary to insert, since people don't know anything, our own history, let alone anybody else's. They want to put the Iraq wars all on the Bushes or Cheney. Well, they fail to remember it was Bill Clinton in his first term that signed the Iraqi Liberation Act, which made it the U.S. stated goal to remove Saddam Hussein. He didn't do it. He got embroiled in controversy and the whole aspirin factory, that it was a dual-use aspirin chemical weapon manufacturer, and the whole Lewinsky stuff. So he never got around to invading Iraq. And after 9/11, after Afghanistan, we then went back to Clinton's Iraqi Liberation Act. And well, now is the convenient time. And there were weapons of mass destruction. Chemical weapons have always been classified weapons of mass destruction, and they were all over the place. The yellow cake thing, yeah, we never found it. Maybe it was moved to Syria. Indeed, maybe it was never there. But there were WMDs. It was our policy to remove them, and we did that.
Well, when I would take the crew and patrol up to Taji, and Taji was like a depot, big warehouse, logistics depot, and they didn't have this building called the Cyanide Warehouse for nothing.
Thank you. And the other thing is, they tried to move a lot of it to Syria. They did. We know that. And other things were hidden. That's why so many troops came back with problems from the burn pits.
Right.
We found caches of WMDs all over Iraqi desert and burned them off to destroy them. Well, Saddam and his team probably didn't even remember, hey, we buried some stuff there and we found them.
Now, there was a military equipment graveyard at Taji, and there was some Russian tanks. And one of the Russian tanks had painted on the barrel Green Bay Packers. Adnan Palace was on Green Bay Packer Avenue.
Well, there's a weird little tidbit. No one's going to get anywhere else.
Which was the Ministry of Interior, where I took one of my trucks. I worked with the South Africans to bring these armored vehicles in for the Iraqi Special Police Commandos, and so we would take them on patrol. But when I took it to Adnan Palace to demonstrate it to General Adnan, or oh shoot, I forgot his name, but it was Adnan Palace, and I can't remember the general's name, was in charge of the Ministry of Interior. But anyway, he came walking out with his entourage, and he looked exactly like Saddam Hussein. And he had like 25 people all gathered around him as they came out to look at the vehicle. And so I've got a picture of me kicking the tires in front of Adnan Palace.
Yeah, and again, that whole history thing. Since we're down this rabbit hole, Saddam, a descendant of a Nazi sympathizer, the whole Ba'ath Party, which is why the Nazi Party was outlawed in Germany, as is today the Ba'ath Party outlawed in Iraq, because it was a direct offshoot of the Nazi Party, the Arab Muslim contingent of the Nazis. People forget Hitler met with the Mufti down there, and a lot of Arabs, Muslims seen Germany as kind of their liberator from at the time, mainly England and France colony, out from under their boot. Be careful what you wish for, things could get worse, right? And also still today, the anti-Semitic connection still remains all from then to now. But at any rate, again, this is way off on a tangent. I didn't expect we would go.
But it was my exposure to all of these foreign countries, and in wartime and serving from the Carter years to the second Obama administration, the entire spectrum. The best years, from my perspective, were the Reagan years. And I was at levels of government at the time that were high enough to understand and get some experience in some of the decision-making processes. What I did discover, though, during some of the later administrations, is the higher I got up in government, the more I was expected to compromise. And the biggest compromise as you move up in rank or move up in status or access to information, you start transitioning from integrity to loyalty without question.
Again, another little tidbit you're not going to get. And indeed, this relates to the book. We'll go back to the book. That whole, the deep state protecting itself, not we the people. And indeed, them wanting you to sell to the deep state and become part of it and protectorate of itself, rather than what may or may not be really best for the nation, or not what's best for the insiders. So, all this in some way, shape, or form, more or less, obviously, to appeal to kids, you don't want to go into war issues, but to some degree, all this does relate and tie in the book.
Right, exactly. It's it's allegorical, but like you said, and no kid, no teenager is going to want to sit and read a history book that contains all of that kind of information with names and dates, because none of us ever really enjoyed history as a concept of memorization. It's better to have a story, and it's better to tell your story from experience than just tell your story from something you read or something you watched. And what's really funny is I decided to go with the animation because the very first movie I saw in the theater was The Incredible Mr. Limpet.
Oh, I love that movie.
And I told the illustrators, I said, before you even start drawing the first picture, I want you to watch the movie, or at least catch some highlights of the movie, The Incredible Mr. Lincoln. So, and I've had that movie since I was 5 or 6 years old, when I went to my very first movie in a movie theater, and that was the movie.
And for those who don't remember, that was with Don Knotts. And to tie back to something you said a little before that, just a minute ago, I'm going to give a little inside behind the scenes on an email we said back and forth. The philosophy of wetting someone's whistle. In fact, you asked me about, questions or whatever, or specifics, and I said, no, just deal in vague generalizations, hopefully enough to pique folks' interest, right? That's your book. Pique their interest, their curiosity, get them to want to research and learn more on their own, question what they've been indoctrinated in for themselves, self-educate. So, I mean, that all ties perfectly. You can't try to force things into people. It's like with the Bible, right? Beating somebody over the head with the Bible. You got to read this. You got to read this. You got to read it. Isn't going to work. Right. You've got to, why I love like weird movies. One of my favorite Christian movies is The Resurrection of Gavin Stone. Now, fellow Christians, some might, oh my God, you can't use the word resurrection in a human, and they're, calm down, right? It's about reaching others, not just preaching to the choir. And it's a whole thing about a ne'er-do-well's journey to Christ through community service he's undertaking, and then takes part in a play that's about the resurrection of Christ. So it's an allegorical personal resurrection from non-believer to believer, and it's a comedy mainly. So through comedy, you can get through people's defenses and plant some seeds, and that is the point. Plant the seed, get them to want to learn more, trying to force them to learn more. It's part of human nature. No, not going to do it.
Yeah,
you can't make me.
Right. I needed a short book, big print, some nice cartoon pictures. Fits on the back of the toilet, and you can probably finish it in one sitting.
We'll edit that up. No, I'm kidding. We won't. We'll leave that. Obviously, Christian show. We don't. I don't swear a whole lot here, but yeah, an occasional shit or damn or but
there are those moments.
Levels of foul language, right? There are times, again, you used it in a fun, joking manner, but also my language articles, sometimes you need something extra for the emphasis. The only way you'll get others' attention is sadly with that. So I'm not adverse to an occasional F-bomb here and there.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't go that far, but it's I don't ever use the Lord's name in vain.
Yeah, but, that's a whole other episode, right?
Right. But I would challenge people to read this little tiny book. It's just a big print. The people down at the senior center really like big print, and they all enjoyed the book. It doesn't take long to read, and I challenge people to find the different levels within government, within society, within culture, how one culture attempts to dominate and reign in dominion over another culture until that culture is completely gone or assimilated, or becomes part of the overall culture. Look at America. I mean, how many cultures make up the American culture? And none of, there may have been some conflict. I mean, every time that there's cultural clash, there's conflict. Look at the hunter-gatherers, and then the agrarians came in and, and tried to wipe out the hunter-gatherers. Then the industrial came in and tried to wipe out both of the previous cultures.
All part of human nature and human history.
Right.
Some want to try to ignore, right? You brought up several things that triggered additional thoughts, like the North American continent. Oh my God, all the white people coming over here and displacing the Native Americans, which, if you go back in history far enough, they migrated over the land bridge. So they also were immigrants to the territory. They also endlessly fought wars against each other for territory. So who really owned what originally is arguable. And the other thing is, you kind of mentioned diversity issue, or right, e pluribus unum. The left can't grasp that. We are indeed a nation of legal immigrants, and we don't culturally appropriate, we blend. E pluribus unum, from many one. From the other cultures, we then melted the melting pot into our own additional unique culture, which often paid homage to the other cultures. And then the last thing I wanted to ask you, this, it may be too high a concept for a book that would be for children's age. Like, do you go into the Roman concept? And some argue today, and I've written about it, I'll include a link in the show notes, the bread and circus, right? Keep the humans distracted. Keep them paying attention to the sporting events, so they don't pay attention to what the leaders are doing to them, not for them. That's probably too broad a concept for that book. No,
not at all. There's a picture of a stadium.
Cool.
There's a picture of a stadium on page 9, with all of the fish being preoccupied going to the games at the stadium.
Bingo, bread and circus.
It's in there. Trust me. It took me over a year to get this book published from the original story that was just a few pages that I had printed out. And of course, the grandkids' mother would read it to them. And I said, well, let's get it published so the kids have a book that they can. I would like to see them do a book report on it. That would be hilarious, especially in today's educational environment. When I was in high school, I was on the debate team, and the debate back in 73, 74 was whether or not the federal government should take over the standardization of education, public education. And
unconstitutional.
The only argument we had at the time was, well, look at Mississippi, they're dumb. That was the only argument.
Now everybody is, though.
So,
since the foundation of the Department of Education, illegally and unconstitutionally, violation of local and states' rights and parental rights, our kids have gotten dumber and dumber and dumber. Test scores keep going down.
But we didn't have that information back then. We were trying to argue for it, and we couldn't win, because there were so many arguments against the federal government taking over the education that there weren't enough facts or examples other than Mississippi to try and sway the other side. And we just couldn't win. But now the other side would probably be reversed. It should really be reversed if that were a debate issue today.
Yeah. Oh, the Supreme Court, it needs to be challenged. Just like Dobbs, abortion is not in the Constitution. It's a state issue. Education, state issue. So many things, states issue, 10th Amendment. But the Constitution is ignored. And harken back to more behind the scenes, we talked about this again. I didn't want to learn a lot about you because it makes for a more unique interview. I learn as the audience learns, right? They may say, how did I not know that stadium scene was in there? Did I not read the book? No, I didn't. I didn't want to. That was the whole point for me to then be fresh to ask you about the book.
And I like your intuitive perception that it would be in there, because you can follow the train of the book even without reading it and just by talking to me about the stories.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Joseph M. Leonard, host of Constitutionals, taking a brief moment to thank myarchic.com. Together, we share the Christian and family value of honoring family. myarchic.com helps you do that. Preserving family memories online also, therefore, can be shared online. Think of myArchic like a Noah's Ark for images, audio, video, preserving, honoring your family. Thank you again to the folks over at myarchic.com. Yeah. So, before we go any further, and I want to wrap it up soon. I don't like to have shows that are too long. I like to try to keep it that, someone could drive to a diner 10 minutes, listen to a show, 10 minutes back to work, over lunch, over dinner, to and from work or whatever, level shows. So, I forgot what I was going to say now. Oh, no. Again, without having read it, but also, I don't have children. I was married, divorced. We never had children. Sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes that's a bad thing, right? But if the sole purpose of life is self-perpetuation of the species, then I say there is no meaning to life. There are higher points and purposes the Bible talks to. But I highly recommend, indeed, if you have high grade or even maybe junior high, and you might even get some high school students interested in it, to buy it and get them to read it, to indeed open them to things the indoctrination factories don't want them thinking about. It's like George Carlin said, right? It sums up the modern left to a T, a dumbed down, bread and circus encompassed society, so you're not paying attention. As Carlin said, they want you just smart enough to run the machines and know what lever to pull on election day, because that's what you've been told to think, not make you able to think. And this book hopefully opens people up, the kids, to thinking.
Okay, I have a couple of quick points. Of course, I wore orange today because it's harvest season and they're harvesting ballots now. And we can go over all the different ways there are to harvest the ballots. But I purchased 50 books. I put them in dentists' offices, doctors' offices. I put them in car repair waiting rooms, the Harley Davidson shop. And I'll go back later on and the pages will be just totally knurled and bent.
So you could tell people are paying attention.
Yes. So I get my feedback by going out and seeing who's reading the book. So you can't go to Autolite or Harley Davidson or any of the repair shops in town or the doctor's office or the dentist, and there's that book sitting on, and it's colorful. It's, it attracts the kids' attention. And if nothing else, they can sit and look through the pictures, put it in waiting rooms in the hospital so that people waiting for their loved ones to come out of surgery and get a little enjoyment out of it. So, and I'm not making a lot of money, not that I care, but I appreciate the fact that people are reading the book. And one more point about what you were saying earlier. We have an occupation and the rest is preoccupation. And our occupation is life. Our occupation is getting to where we're supposed to go. I mean, we get a body and a brain, and we get to travel through life, and everyone has the same destiny.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. I'm going to tell you up front, I'm going to steal it. No, I'm kidding. No, but that's good. I claim no propriety to anything I say, and the reason I don't is because someone's probably said it, and I don't want to claim
You know,
Right. You accidentally thinking the same way, right? Saying a similar,
sure,
but you could
sure.
be accused of paraphrasing somebody's famous quote,
Right.
and you don't want to be accused of stealing
Yeah,
it.
and-
No,
and-
I get that. I have a whole quotations chapter, and I talk about, the issue of plagiarism, as well as sometimes some similar people can and will say similar things, independently thinking of others that may have said it. And also regarding your book and kids, just out and about average kids potentially seeing it, it's important because rather than them reading the warped children's story, Aesop's fables
Right.
and all that have been bastardized from the original versions, right? The Three Little Pigs story moral is lost. The Robin Hood story is twisted, takes from the rich to give to the poor. No, the moral was a governance story. He took from the Sheriff of Nottingham, representative of the king of the state, and
Right.
took monies stolen from the peasants in the form of taxes, because taxation is theft. One of the morals of the Robin Hood story, the left don't want people to understand, and gave it back from the government to the peasants.
Yeah, well, look what they did with Noah.
Oh yeah, the one Noah movie was just like, oh my, but yeah. At any rate, I want to say before I forget, on the book, because there may be other Roy Weavers, right? You are Roy F. Weaver on Amazon on the book. Roy F. Weaver. Now, does Roy F. Weaver have a website for people to reach out to you with?
I do not.
You just use Amazon kind of as your stop.
I
I get it.
Amazon. I mean, you can look me up on a couple different things, but I'm kind of scattered around. I was on the U.S. ski jumping team in 1976. So if you look up Roy Weaver and ski jumping, you'll get some information from some of my former comrades. I have another book.
Oh, don't use that word during the show.
Which is also on Amazon. So it's only because if you look me up, you might find the other books. And I had it, and the reason I mentioned it is because I dedicated the Largemouth Bass to my daughter who had brain cancer, and she died, and so I wrote her biography from my perspective, and that's the other book. And all the proceeds that I get from these books go to St. Jude Children's Research. And I'm not doing it to get other people to buy my book, so I will give the money to St. Jude's. If you want to give money to St. Jude's, give money to St. Jude's. That's just my commitment personally. I'm not trying to, a lot of people will collect a bunch of money and give it to charity as if they were giving it to charity, but it's all the people that contributed. So
yeah,
that's just my own person. I don't keep any of the proceeds.
Right. Well, regarding the joke about you using the word comrade, of course, it's a four-letter word now, but you go back before Marx, comrade wouldn't be a nasty, dirty word, right? It's like I talk on this Christian show all the time. Community is biblical. It's voluntary. Our free will through charity, we are to be our brother's keeper, versus communism, and socialism, the bastardization of community, which is forced and theft. Big difference.
Yeah. So anyway, and like you said, the community of ski jumping includes a lot of other countries as well, to include Eastern Bloc, Scandinavia, and Russian. I skied with Russians back in the 70s. So I'm like I said.
Okay. All right. Now the truth
community.
comes out. You're really a Putin spy, aren't you? For the record of the transcript, I'm laughing. That was a joke.
Yeah. Well, I was on the program that was compromised by Robert Hansen to the Russians, so I'm pretty familiar with how that works.
Oops.
Yeah.
Again, yet another accidental rabbit hole.
Right.
Okay, well, thank you, Roy F. Weaver. Go ahead and hold up the book one more time. Give us the title.
The Largemouth Bass and the Wave Things.
Thank you for
tale of the ocean perspective of life as it is unfolding before our eyes today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming on. A lot of times this happens with a guest. I'm genuinely remotely interested, but never really know how really superb the show is going to go until we record it.
Right.
Take care. God bless, brother.
Okay. God bless you too. And thank you all. And thank everyone for listening, and look forward to hearing from you in the future.
Thank you for having tuned in for Constitutionalist Politics Show. If you haven't already, please check out my primary internationally available book, Terror Strikes, coming soon to a city near you. Available anywhere books are sold. If you have locally run bookstores still near you, they can order it for you. And let me remind, over time, the fancy high production items will come. But for now, for starters, it's just you as a very appreciated listener by me. All substance, no fluff, just straight to key discussion points. A show that looks at a variety of topics, mostly politics, through a Christian U.S. constitutionalist lens. So again, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Take care. God bless. Like and subscribe to Constitutionalist Politics Podcast and share episodes. We need your help.
Wham Radio, 1600 AM and 92.7 FM is your conservative flamethrower. Weekdays, Steve Gruber starts things off at 6 a.m. Gruber gives his perspective on the issues of the day. At 9 a.m., Glenn Beck blazes the airwaves with his nationally syndicated program. From noon to 3, it's Dennis Prager. At 3 o'clock, it's Wham's own Thayrone X. On the Edge, Thayrone tells it exactly as he sees it. At 6, it's The Dana Show, your conservative alternative. At 8, don't miss Joe Pags. Weekends are filled with conservative talk as well. Fingers Malloy, Thomas LeDuc, The Abolitionists Roundtable, A Moment of Clarity with Pastor Rick, Your American Heritage with Ed Bondarenka, Dave Janda's Operation Freedom, and Dick Kupke's Trigger Talk. You can even get links to Wham podcasts from Dave, Dick, and of course Thayrone, all from their pages on our website, whamradio.com. Keep it locked on Wham Radio, 1600 AM and 92.7 FM in southeastern Michigan, and whamradio.com anywhere in the world.